I'm Sunny.
And I'm Brandy, and this is Bourbon, Wine, and True Crime, a show where three witty but sometimes indiscreet friends sit down once a week to drink virtually and discuss true crime. Hello, ladies.
And hello, indiscreet is a good word.
Well, hello there.
Mhm.
Indiscreet. Yeah, we are not. We are not that.
We can be. That's why I said sometimes.
Occasionally.
When the occasion calls for it.
When the occasion calls for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, what are you ladies drinking?
Well, since we are recording a double episode right now, I have just had another Poco Loco of tequila, and I still have my beautiful glass of crystal
You and
wine.
your Poco Loco.
I am a Poco Loco.
And the bedazzled wine glass.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm as always off brand drinking my vodka.
Vodka.
What are you drinking, Sunny?
I am drinking Moon Haze, Blue Moon, hazy, juicy pale ale. Not because this is what I would like to be drinking, but it is because it is the only thing in my house. So that's what's happening.
You said juicy, and all I heard was that your IPA is thick.
It's thick with 3 C's.
Ew.
Yeah, baby. It's
Ew.
thick.
Well, AJ, you're taking the lead on the case today. And
I am. What were you gonna say?
Is this the one that you've been talking about for like 2 months?
It's one of them, yes, that I have been just like percolating on I've been telling you guys about it for several months. It's been in my brain since I was in high school. So this is one of those cases that occurred very close to home being El Paso, Texas. I was 18 when this crime occurred, and I remember it very well. And it had always stayed with me. So today we're going to be talking about a young lady who was born in El Paso, Texas her name was Carlie Martinez. And Carlie Martinez, that was a case that my dad cut the newspaper clipping out when she disappeared and put it on I can't remember if he put it on my door or if he put it on my pillow. And I was a senior in high school.
As like a cautionary tale?
As a cautionary tale. That was definitely my dad's modus operandi to, scare us into not behaving a certain way or not doing a certain thing, or, just trying to keep us safe. I was also in high school when there was a violent rash of women who went missing and turned up abducted and murdered and across the border in Juarez, Mexico. And so he would do the same thing with those paper clippings, put them on my door, put them on my pillow, no, don't do that. Don't go to Juarez. And so, Sunny, I know we have quite a little bit of an age difference, but do you remember that rash of, yeah.
Oh, of course.
It was very scary. It was very scary. And at that time I had a lot of friends that would cross the border on weekends to go drink in Juarez because it was perfectly acceptable to be 15, 16, 17 years old and go over there and they would serve you. But my dad scared the shit out of me with these newspapers clippings. And so I never went.
It was scary what was happening over there.
It was very scary. So I never went over there. But at 18, when she went missing, it struck a nerve in me that never actually went away. And so she is somebody who I've wanted to talk about for a long time. So I'm very, very thankful for this opportunity to discuss Carlie Martinez. And so before we even begin with the case or what brings her to the spotlight, is this episode is dedicated to Carlie and in her loving memory of this beautiful young lady that she was, and to her family who have kept her name in the media and in the spotlight, and so that nobody would forget what she went through. And so I just want to shout out to Carlie, may she rest in peace, and to her family for being such incredible people. So
you haven't even started yet and I already have goosebumps.
So let's talk about Carlie. So Carlie Martinez was born June 15th, 1979 in El Paso, Texas. She was a Gemini, which is symbolized by twins, which Carlie was. She had a twin brother, who we'll get to in just a little bit, but she did have a twin brother. She graduated from Burgess High School in 1997. She played volleyball for the Mustangs and she loved playing that sport. She didn't know the word opponent she just loved playing the game. She's described as having a smile and gentle warmth about her that allowed all that knew her to enjoy their private world of sunshine when they were around her.
Oh.
She was active in many civic groups and organizations, and she viewed the positives in everything. From what I can still find, she is still survived by her father, Carlos, her mother, Rachel, sister, Roxanne, brother, David Joel, and her twin brother, Carlos Marcos. Sadly, Carlie passed away March 15th, 1998. At the time of her death, she was a student at NMSU, where she was majoring in speech pathology in Las Cruces, New Mexico. She was very famous for her banana nut bread during the holidays, and her aunt is quoted by saying, "Isn't she cute? She's just this adorable, just beautiful little baby girl, and she's just precious."
Anybody that can manage to make banana nut bread, usually you just let the bananas go to overripe, and then you're like, you're going to be banana nut bread, and it never actually happens. You're lying to your fruit.
Well, she was no liar. She made very famous banana nut bread during the holidays. Her aunt is quoted by saying, and I love this, quote, "She wasn't a saint, but she was good and quiet and reserved." This was her aunt, Ruth Pena. At the time she was, quote, this is a further of the quote, "At the time she was naive and learning what it meant to be a woman."
You mean live in fear?
Yes, that's like when I was writing that, I was like, that's what it means. It's like you have to be vigilant. You have to live in this like constant state of awareness and observation and like alertness. Like there's no downtime to like, oh, cool. Like I can just do whatever I want.
I got so annoyed with Eduardo the other day because there's so on base, you can't have like offensive decals on your vehicle. And there's two that were spotted that was like this very large, very like obviously offensive stickers on their vehicles. And I was complaining to him about it. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, it's silly. And he was like, I wouldn't even, and these stickers are on the hood of the cars. Same sticker, two different vehicles. It's a terrible word and I don't want to say it. He was like, I wouldn't even notice that. And I was like, you wouldn't notice a 6-inch tall, 2-foot wide sticker on the hood? And he's like, no, I don't look at cars. I'm like, man, men exist in a world of just obliviousness because they don't have to live in our world where it's, is somebody following me? Are they following too closely? Are they just walking to their car? Are they paying too much attention to me? Like this sphere that we, you know, as women have to live in, where we have to be so on guard because the worst that could happen to us is such a real possibility every day.
It's every day for us. And I'll say this, like I'm speaking that truth as from a position of a very privileged white woman, you know, that's not, I can't even speak to that of those position of somebody who is marginalized and targeted, and you know, it's infuriating.
I found out the other day, I was listening to a podcast about probably true crime, and Black trans women are 70% more likely to be the victim of a violent crime than like cisgendered women or white women. And I was like, 70%?
Well, keep that statistic in your mind for me.
Okay?
Yeah.
We might circle back to that.
Okay.
So Carlie's aunt, who was Ruth Pena, she had started writing a manuscript about Carlie. And I bring this up because I couldn't find a whole lot about Carlie's growing up years. I wanted to know more about her and know who she was. And it was really difficult to find that kind of like heart and soul that was Carlie. But I did eventually find this one newspaper clipping from 2008 where her aunt is speaking about her, and she was writing a manuscript about Carlie that was entitled Novena, written by Ruth Pena. And it's unclear if the book ever made it to publish, because the book was supposed to talk about Carlie's life and her early years and the prayers that they had for Carlie. But I could not find the book to save my life. And Ruth passed away in 2017, unfortunately. But it sounds like her and her aunt were very, very close. And one of the last times that Carlie and her Aunt Ruth spoke was Ruth said to Carlie, promise me that you'll stop looking for a job and concentrate on your studies. And Carlie said, yes, okay, I promise I'll stop concentrating on that. I'll concentrate on my studies if you finish your manuscript. So Carlie really wanted her to finish this book. And then after Carlie's death, Ruth, made a vow to write about Carlie. And then I can't find if it was published. I really hope it was, and I'm just not digging deep enough, but I'm trying to find it. After Carlie passed away, her mother and father started a run walk to honor their daughter and keep her memory alive, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but I just want to bring that up because her memory is still very much spoken about. So to get into the actual crime. So Carlie was last seen on January 14th, 1998, entering her dorm at NMSU, New Mexico State University in Las Cruces. She was being dropped off by her father, and she was with her roommate at the time. So her and her roommate were together, and they were dropped off at their dorm around 6:30 p.m. after purchasing textbooks for the new spring semester. She turned around from her door and said, "I love you, Dad." And that was the last time she was seen alive by her family. Carlie would be reported missing the next day. Her parents immediately appealed to the media, which is in stark contrast to at the time, like 1998, police would be telling like friends or family to like, don't talk to the media. We don't want to scare suspects away. Like we need you to not say anything. But they were like, oh, no, I don't think so. So they immediately went to the media. They immediately went to the newspapers, started printing flyers and posting them all around NMSU.
They were incredibly ahead of their time.
Because
families do that now if there's not enough. The Vanessa Guillen story, I think that would have been swept under the rug, but her family hit the media and social media hard, and that's what brought some kind of action to her disappearance.
And so they reported her missing the next day, and within 6 days, they had like flyers everywhere in the media, in the newspaper. They were just yelling as loud as they could for anybody to hear them. Okay, so Carlie did not have a driver's license. She did not use credit cards, and she did not use ATMs. And so this was making it very difficult to track her. I did find a true crime documentary about her case, and I did watch it. It was really good, and you can find it on Tubi. It's from the series The New Detectives, and it's in season 9, episode 2, called Blind Trust. So from here forward, that's where a lot of this information is going to come from, is from that episode. It's also going to come from El Paso Times, the local El Paso newspaper, as well as the Albuquerque newspaper. So here we go. So January 1998, 911 received a call about a missing student from NMSU, Carlie Martinez, who was about to start her second semester. On January 15th, a report was filed. Family and friends immediately started posting flyers around campus in hopes that new information would be reported. Officers combed surrounding areas. 4 days passed before they got the first break in the case. Samuel Sanchez saw the flyers and contacted police. He said that he had seen Carlie with a man named Jesse Avalos, who was one of his coworkers at an off-campus bookstore. Remember, she'd been buying textbooks. Mm-hmm. He said he saw them together that night at a local roller rink, skating together and holding hands on January 14th, and that they were later joined by a man named Jason Desnoyers, one of Jesse Avalos's friends. Carlie reportedly was somewhat familiar with Jesse. They knew each other by a site from campus library where they would both go to the library and get online. So she knew him visually, and then she saw him at the bookstore. Jesse had asked Carlie out several times, even joking with her that he wasn't an axe murderer. She was eventually persuaded to go out with him on January 14th. It's okay, go out with me. I'm no axe murderer.
I mean,
so funny. So many women are killed by serial killers.
Methinks thou protest too much. Okay. Samuel said that the roller rink closed early that evening, and he saw both men leave with Carlie. Campus police were the first to speak to Jesse Avalos. Jesse started off as a willing, helpful person to the police. He said he had dropped Carlie off at a nearby gas station because she stated that she needed to use a payphone. The detective, David Cortez, I believe was his name, found the story odd because why would she need to use a payphone when she had a phone in her dorm room? Detectives now wanted to speak to friend Jason Desnoyers. Jason's story, it's a lot of J's. Jason's story started out much like Jesse's, that he met up with the pair at the roller rink, but that's where his story became different than Jesse's. He said that they took her back to the school and dropped her off in front of her dorm room. The detective felt like something wasn't right because of the differences in their stories. Police asked to search Jason's truck, hoping to find any evidence. They noticed scratches inside going from one door to the other. However, the inside was also very clean, as if it had just been recently deep cleaned. Police collected fibers and checked for blood and any other bodily fluids. The center of the seat in the front glowed under luminol. So this is very high tech for 1999 or 1998. I'm sorry, 1998. When examined more closely, a large stain was found and samples were sent to the lab for testing. So the police cut the center section of the truck, took out the foam, took out the fibers, and sent that to the lab. At the surface level, there was no stains, but when they turned it over, it was dark and brown and very clearly stained with some fluid. So again, keep in mind, this is 1998. So we're not yet there with DNA advancements that we have now. So all they could really do was test it for human blood at the time. So the positive results came back that in fact there was human blood, but the recent cleaning had destroyed the DNA evidence. So it had denatured all of the DNA samples. Authorities hoped the media coverage would bring more information. So now at this time, the police are encouraging more media attention. So this is good. So they're going back to Jesse Avalos, and investigators interviewed his neighbor. And the neighbor, who if I understood it correctly, the neighbor at the time was already in custody for another crime. And so he was easily accessible. And the neighbor said that he had been approached by Jason Desnoyers and asked him to do a favor, that if he could hide a jacket. So he asked the neighbor to hide the jacket, and he did hide it, and he hid it in some rolled up carpet behind the apartment building that they lived in. So the police go back, they searched the area and found the carpet with a military style jacket rolled up into it. The jacket had suspicious staining on it, and it was bagged and sent in for testing. Police searched the apartment of Avalos, Jesse Avalos, and found blood evidence. The shower curtain had blood stains, and there was one long dark hair that was retrieved from Jesse's bed. So just to give kind of a descriptor of Carlie, she had long, dark, beautiful hair. She had big eyes. She wore eyeglasses. She had a beautiful, bright smile. She was a very attractive young lady, just beautiful. At this time, they asked Carlie's family to come in and provide any DNA samples from Carlie that they could have. And so they brought in what I could tell was a hairbrush to take hair samples to possibly get a DNA profile from Carlie. Samples of Avalos's clothing were also taken. There was a warrant that was granted to get DNA samples from both subjects, Jesse and Jason. Detective David Cortez noticed a large cut on Jason's right hand that was scabbing over, and it looked like it had been a very recent injury. So the detectives bring both of them in. He notices that on Jason, but Jason at this time is now retained an attorney, and the attorney at this point stops the detectives and is like, "You're not allowed to take pictures of my client." So
was it AJ, do you know if the cut, where the cut was on his hand, on the back or the front?
It was on the front, right here, with the pinky. Like this right here.
Yeah.
So the attorney would not allow any pictures. So unfortunately that evidence wasn't necessarily collected, but the observation was made and notated. So that's good. Okay. So all of the samples for both men were sent in for testing. The jacket did indeed test positive for human blood, and the shower curtain also tested positive results for human blood. The blood on the items came back for 3 separate individuals, which would be highly unusual if you were taking, a shower curtain or clothing samples from one person and there's 3 DNA profiles coming back.
My eyebrows are up.
And so once those profiles were compared to both the suspects and the victim, it indeed matched all three to the suspects and positive for the victim.
Why wouldn't you? I mean, I love a stupid criminal because they get caught.
Right.
Why would you get rid of it? Like if I'd killed somebody for whatever reason, I'm burning my clothes, my shoes, the shower curtain, the carpet, the house. I'm taking and they just like, hey, just hide this. And I understand in 1998, the information about evidence left behind and the technology was less advanced. So maybe they didn't know, but when you were talking about the jacket age, it was so weird to me that he was like, oh, just hide this. Like, why wouldn't you get rid of it?
Get rid of it. Why? Okay. One, boys are dumb. Okay.
I mean,
and
goes that side.
These two Nimrods are in their early 20s, so still dumb. And I think that what I've learned throughout the thousands of hours of true crime documentaries, podcasts, radio shows, etc., that I've learned is that DNA is always left behind. Evidence will always be there. No matter how hard you try, no matter how smart you think you are, no matter how much you think you clean up, there is always evidence.
It's just what's crazy though is like it was just such a game changer, just the way DNA it was. There could just be blood everywhere, and they're like, weird, and like nothing. They didn't do anything with it. Yeah. They're just like.
Well, then the pendulum swung the other way. There was like, oh, we have this DNA evidence, and it's conclusive, DNA. And this is the smoking gun, and this is it. And so we have a lot of people on death row or who have been executed because of DNA evidence that was not valid. It was inaccurate because of transfer DNA or transfer DNA evidence or touch DNA evidence that you went to the supermarket and you asked a question to the cashier, and that cashier's DNA is now on you, and you turn up dead, and all of a sudden now the cashier is on death row. So there's that extreme, and then you have the other extreme where it's like, this is the person, and juries and judges are like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, like literal eyewitnesses, which like eyewitness statements are infallible.
But DNA, like if you've got the DNA, like there's nail scrapings, and there's like semen, and there's like brain spatter, and like there's all this stuff, and the jury's like, I don't think that's enough.
I'm thinking of a very particular rape case right now. Brock Turner. I lost the name. So I'm going to say his name because he's a fucking garbage ass human, where literal witnesses saw him raping that girl and detained him. And they were just like, yeah, that's bad. We just don't want it to affect his life too much. I'm like,
was he a swimmer?
Yes.
Oh.
Yep.
So after these DNA matches were all tested positive to both suspects and the victim, now police had what they needed to get Jason Desnoyers at least. They already know where Jesse Avalos is, but they have to contact now Jason Desnoyers. They contact his lawyers, they contact his friends, they contact his family, but he was nowhere to be found. He has bounced. He is no longer in the area. His lawyer is like, yo no sé. So now they only have one suspect to really manipulate. So they go to Jesse Avalos, asking for his help in the case. And so they're trying to appeal to his humanity a little bit at this point. They don't want to like show them their hand and saying like, this is the evidence we have. They're like, hey, so like Jason skipped out and we really need your help, right? Like be the hero, like come and help us.
He doesn't know that he's implicated yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. So Detective Cortez's his tactic works, and out of the blue, Jesse says that they should go for a ride. So they get in the car, he and Cortez, and Jesse takes them to this isolated desert around Las Cruces, where both of you have been to this area. You know, it's a very isolated, very desolate.
There's a whole lot of desert. Nothing out there.
There's a whole lot of nothing. Whole lot of animals, whole lot of scavengers, a lot of weather and environmental factors. It's if you wanted to get rid of something, like this is a good place to do it. So he took the detective out to this isolated spot around Las Cruces, and he takes them to a very specific point where he says Jason Desnoyers took items to burn. And sure enough, they find this burn spot, and there were parts of clothing like zippers, buttons. There was a pair of glasses and a stick of lipstick were found. And one item that was in particular were these set of keys that didn't burn, because as we know that, you have to achieve a certain level of heat to burn all things, and there was this set of keys that didn't burn, and they did in fact belong to Carlie's dorm room number. So Jesse told Detective Cortez that Jason had killed Carlie and then burned the items to destroy the evidence. And this is the first.
So he's just like, they're like, hey, do the right thing. He's like, you're right. He killed her. Just off rip with everything. Obviously, I had nothing to do with it. I just rode out to the desert with him to burn. I'm sorry. You guys are two of my best friends. If you were like, we're going to go burn some shit, I'm like, I have questions. Is this ex-boyfriend's things? Is this ex-husband? What are we doing out here? Right. Do I need to stop asking questions so I don't have to lie under oath later on? What are we doing?
Right.
He's just,
oh, it's right here. It's right here. Right here.
What?
This piece of shit. He thought he was smarter. Yep.
Because he's, okay, I'm sorry. I'll let you talk.
So this is the first time that they get Jesse in front of cops, making a connection to the kidnapping and murder of Carlie, also in connection with Jason.
Mm-hmm.
So detectives then called Carlie's family to identify the items. So Carlie's mother and father, Rachel and Carlos, confirmed that the keys and the other items were indeed Carlie's. I do believe that they did find some jewelry in addition to the keys and lipstick and glasses. And so that jewelry in particular was very identifiable. So she went missing January 14th that night and was reported missing January 15th. Jason has disappeared. They've got Jesse kind of like in their hairs. And on March 17th, 1998, in the early morning hours, Detective Cortez got a phone call that Jason Desnoyers had been located outside of San Diego, California. And just really by luck, because this is really pre-internet and pre-social media and all of the networks talking to each other, there was a local police officer in San Diego that had seen a photo of Jason Desnoyers as a wanted person and had recognized him. So he gets immediately that morning just surrounded by police and was arrested and transported back to Las Cruces. He was formally booked for the murder of Carlie. They then arrested Jesse Avalos for tampering with evidence. And at the time, they did not have a body, but police were still very confident they could get a conviction despite the lack of, the body of Carlie.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, they've got both men arrested and they begin to pit them against each other. So Detective Cortez goes in and talks to Jesse and says, hey, like Jason is, and he's singing like a bird over there. He's telling us that you did it. And so Jesse is like, oh no, like I didn't do it. He did it. And I can take you directly to her body.
This is the friend.
This is the initial guy, Jesse Avalos. This is the main dude that said, I'm not an axe murderer.
Dick.
Yeah. So he took police to several areas where he said that the body could be found, but nothing was found. So the police used this other tactic while Jesse was out in the desert, like pointing police in different directions. They drove up Jason in another car so that the two could see each other, like, oh, well, you're cooperating and you're cooperating. So at this point, Jason flips and is like, oh, I can tell you where Jesse killed her and Jesse put the body. So now Jason is claiming the same thing, that it was Jesse that killed her. It was Jesse that dumped the body. It was all, and I can show you where.
Mm-hmm.
So now they go on the same circus. Like Jason takes him out, Jason takes him out, takes him several places, and again, nothing is found. So the original burn site where the majority of the evidence was found, that's kind of where they're concentrating their radius search of, like starting from there, like moving outward. Hundreds of people came out in support, like to look for Carlie and to find her. And again, being native to El Paso, you see people like riding horseback on the side of the road all the time, especially where I live, and it's like very normal. And so a lot of these civilians that came out to help were horseback riders, and they could be in the desert, they could be out there. And in fact, it was one of the civilian searchers that was on horseback located the remains that was very near the bird site. The detectives came immediately, went to the scene and confirmed that it was the body, that it was the burned body of a young woman. So she had been burned. So after 67 days, Carlie was finally found.
Her poor family.
She was badly decomposed after being exposed to the desert environment for over 2 months. There was evidence around her body that showed that she had indeed tried to escape at the time. Her body was taken to Albuquerque for an autopsy, and dental records confirmed that she was indeed Carlie Martinez. An initial assessment of the body showed that she had been sexually assaulted and stabbed 27 times in multiple areas of injury, including blunt force trauma to the head. A tiny piece of metal was found embedded into the skull, particularly her cheek, through x-rays. And this indicated that there was, they found evidence that there was another weapon used. So the speculation was that the second weapon was a pair of needle nose pliers, indicating that 2 people had attacked Carlie, and that, so that it was either indicating that 2 people had attacked Carlie, one with a single-edged knife, and the other person had attacked her with another sharp object, or that one person had attacked her, first attacking her with a single-edged knife, put that knife down, picked up another sharp object, and proceeded to attack her, which was highly unlikely. So
I was
the more likely way that the evidence is leaning is that there are 2 separate weapons indicating 2 separate assailants. So now the crime scene is starting to come together. So the detectives constructed the rest of the evening of the kidnapping and murder. Jesse and Jason, after going to the roller skating rink, I saw a couple of conflicting reports that either A, they had gone directly out into the desert to continue the evening, or B, they had gone to several night spots and continued drinking and then got out into the desert. I don't know which one to rely the most heavily on, because I think that in actuality, she was probably immediately taken to the desert.
I was going to say, she was what, 18?
She was 18.
Where's she going to drink?
Right.
I mean, they were in a roller. I mean, at that time, it was pretty easy to find somewhere.
True, but the only argument I have against that is that I could not find any other evidence of any other witnesses say that, yeah, these 3 individuals had been in this spot and these 3 individuals had been in this other spot, like times and locations. Like there was no other mention of witnesses or solid like evidence that those 3 had been seen in other night spots. There was just like a brief like whisper in one of the news articles. So it is, I'm speculating, but I feel like they took her immediately to the desert because she was 18 and because she was naive and trusting and like, hey, let's go out and we can continue to drink out here. And so if you're familiar with the area, they took her to a place that the locals and people called the Mesa. So desolate desert, nothing out there, just go out to drink and party. So in Carlie, the report is that she kind of sat between them, like on the tailgate of the truck, kind of in between them. And they were hitting on her and trying to get her to put out. And that's not my words, those are their words. And when she wouldn't consent, they continued to give her more alcohol, and she continued to say no. They were, as she was saying no, they then raped her. And as they were raping her, were like, well, we can't leave her as a witness. So they decided to murder her, leaving her body out in the desert, hoping that evidence and that she would just disappear.
I always find it so hard to believe, like whenever you hear stories like this, where 2 people raped somebody and then they immediately decide to kill her. And like, you did this before. Maybe not to the extent of murder, but you've done something. Did this.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I was telling Pedro earlier that like, I cannot find any other reports of assault on these two, but I just feel like there had to have been something out there.
But I mean, think about it. If maybe they didn't murder somebody before, but
right. This was not their first rodeo.
No, because
pardon my pun, but
now we're understanding it's starting to hit the news more about the rape culture that exists in colleges. And it's been there well before it's been identified, and
it's still there.
100%. I feel like they had like together individually, they'd assaulted other women before and just.
But they have.
I mean, for Jesse to take Carlie to a roller rink and then Jason just to appear like, hey, I didn't know you were going to be here. What's going on? You know, these two had.
They were in cahoots.
They had an MO. They were in cahoots. They have done this before. And they either plied a woman with enough alcohol that she was not in her full faculties, or they had done it so violently that she was afraid. I don't know, but it was. I agree with you completely. Like, this could not have been their first offense by any stretch. So during the trial, it was revealed that Carlie had been stabbed more than 30 times during the struggle for her life, both with a knife and another instrument to be believed to be a pair of needle nose pliers.
This is in the desert where she was killed?
Yes.
They just had these with them, totally
That's
unplanned.
right, in the truck. So again, it for me to piece it together, it sounds like they went to the roller rink, then they took her to the desert. She refused, they forced, they raped her, they murdered her. They went back to Jesse's apartment, showered, both of them. So there was blood on the shower curtains. There was blood evidence in the apartment, but it wasn't evidence of that the crime was there, and that the like their clothing had been there. But Carlie, and so that one hair was from Jason's transferring that evidence to his bed, but she was killed and raped in the desert. That's how I piece it together. I think I'm speculating, but I think I'm pretty close. So investigators now had to prove that both Avalos and Desnoyers were responsible, not just one over the other, but both. So at trial, both suspects continued to try to blame each other and offer almost mirror images of each other's defense. Each man said that they thought Carlie had been interested in the other, so claimed that they had backed off. She was totally interested in my friend, so I went back to the truck. Oh no, dude, she was totally interested in you, so I went back to the truck.
So
victim blaming. Let's victim blame.
What? So they're saying that the other one killed this girl while they're in the desert in a truck.
Yes.
If you have never been in the desert or been in the woods are loud, like even out in the middle of nowhere, the woods are loud. The desert is silent. You can hear everything. If we have any vets listening that deployed, how if you're on like a fob or a base in the middle of nowhere and you can hear vehicles coming from if they're trying to say that their friend killed Carlie and they didn't know about it, there is no fucking way you would hear somebody walking off.
So it was reported that during Jason's trial, Jason Desnoyers, that he was in fact a very heavy sleeper, and that he just thought, Jesse and Carlie were getting friendly, and he had a lot to drink, so he went to sleep in the truck, and he was a very heavy sleeper. It was also a witness on the stand had said that Jason was such a sweet guy and would never hurt anybody. And
I just threw up in my mouth. He's such a nice guy.
There's nothing I can do.
Aren't they all?
Aren't they all?
They would never.
But they both had the same story. So like Jason was like, no, dude, I fell asleep. And Jesse Avalos was like, no, man, like I thought you were getting close with her. So I went in the truck and fell asleep. Well, you both fell asleep. So Jesse Avalos during trial says that he went to sleep and awoke to find Desnoyers had murdered Carlie, while Desnoyers had said the same thing about Avalos. Meanwhile, a witness testified in court that Avalos had joked about Carlie in the weeks after she had vanished, saying after he heard someone scream that Carlie had screamed just like that. So he hears someone scream and is like, oh, Carlie screams just like that, suggesting that he could make someone go missing, quote, just like Carlie.
They
Another
sound
witness,
super apologetic.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the apologies. Another witness had incriminating evidence about Desnoyers, reporting that he had confessed to getting Carlie drunk, but that she would, quote, put out. Ultimately, DNA on a fingernail at the bottom of the fingernail of Carlie would be positively matched to Jason Desnoyers, confirming he had indeed attacked her, despite his consistent pleas of innocence, saying that he had been asleep while Jesse had raped and murdered Carlie.
If I roll my eyes any harder, my retinas will detach.
So there was an initial mistrial due to intense media coverage, and a jury found Jason. So there was a deadlock on Jason's trial, and then it had to be moved to Albuquerque because of the intense media scrutinage. Jesse went to a separate trial, but both men were eventually found guilty and convicted of first-degree felony murder, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, and 3 counts to conspiring to tampering with evidence, and single counts of kidnapping and rape, while Jesse Desnoyers was convicted of murder, rape, kidnapping, and 10 other counts against him. It was surmised that the 2 men had taken Carlie out into the desert with the intention of having sex with her, but then raped her when she refused. Knowing she would report them for what they had done, they murdered her and disposed of her body in a remote location in an attempt to get away with their crime. I tried to find any updated information about Jesse or Jason. What I could find is that Jesse had a brother named Adam Avalos, who was stabbed to death in prison while serving a sentence for a myriad of charges. And I could not find any updated information on Jason Desnoyers, whether he is alive or and still in prison, or if he had died somehow. So shortly after Carlie's disappearance and murder, NMSU began giving a scholarship in honor of Carlie. And I could not find if that scholarship program is still around, but I do believe that that was a very valiant effort in NMSU. Carlie Martinez's family keeps her memory alive by organizing a fundraiser for victims of sexual assault with an organization. Why do I have such a hard time with words like that?
Words are hard.
Organization called STARS, and I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it is a local organization in El Paso, Texas, that counsels and supports victims of sexual assault. So just to shout out Carlie's father, Carlos Martinez, he remembers a day when sexual assault was a very hushed up subject. It was often seen as what a woman was wearing or that she was asking for it. And now he has a very passionate message against sexual assault after his daughter was a victim of that. So now they have a run walk annual fundraiser in honor of Carlie Martinez that raises thousands of dollars every year. And the last that I could find was pre-pandemic. The last year that the run walk was held was in 2018. But if anybody out there can hear me and knows if there's one coming up for 2022,
let us know.
I would love to be a part of that and just honor Carlie. And to quote her father, we can remember Carlie by being supportive of the victims of sexual assault, to help them, to support them, and be a positive force in their lives, he added. So kudos to you, Carlos Martinez, and rest in peace, Carlie. We love you very much.
It's so, to me, it's so, I mean, a lot of these crimes we talk about are so senseless, but like, they probably wouldn't have gotten in trouble. If we're looking at rape culture in colleges that has been prevalent for many years, and they'd been like, she's like, hey, like I got raped by these 2 dudes. I hope that we're changing now, but I think in the 90s they would have been like, yeah, but like you were drunk.
Yeah.
Well, as we know, in the 2000s, it also was the same. and that it continues to, so.
And I know that this was a hard topic and a hard case.
But it's an important one.
It's a very important one. And Carlie, you're not forgotten.
I hope those two rot. I hope they're still alive.
I do too.
I truly do, because I hope that they're rotting in jail.
So, yeah.
Well,
That's
you,
my case.
AJ.
Thanks, AJ. I wish I could hug you right now.
I know.
Bring it in.
She's I see, just to kind of wrap this up, I see the seniors graduating, and I see how innocent and young they are. And I've thought of that, you just want to protect them all as best you can.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because we act the way that we act because of the trauma that we've experienced. And you want to give people that same kind of guardedness, but you don't want them to be, I guess, as paranoid as we are with the myriad of things that we
You don't want them to
with.
be worrying. We want to protect them, and we don't want them to worry.
Right. So it's, how do you do that? Like, how do you protect them without being like,
you tell the stories. You have to change this society. Like, that's where it happens. We have to change.
And I felt like Carlie has been speaking to me for many, many years, since I was 18, and I feel like her story needed to be told. Her voice still needs to be heard. Her name still needs to be out there. It still needs to be a story that we don't forget and that we don't keep alive. So, Carlie, this is for you, and we love you very much. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Well, thank you for listening, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for this story, AJ. Yes, you can
follow us places.
Follow us all the places.
All the places.
Please don't follow me. I'm paranoid.
Yeah. Actually, after this, don't want to. No, thanks. No following.
No. We're actually we're anonymous. You can follow us on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're not on Twitter because reasons. So
Bourbon, Wine, and True Crime.
Bourbon, Wine, and True Crime on Instagram and Facebook. Bourbon, Wine, and True Crime at yahoo.com. Please
like and subscribe.
Leave us a positive review. Give us some case suggestions. You can tell me how dope my cat ears are.
They're so dope.
They're so dope.
But until next time.
Love you.